Hey there everyone, welcome back to Cowboy Survival. I'm Richard, and what we did in the previous video is we looked at how to take some simple duck cloth and take it from duck cloth and turn it into a really nice sheet of waxed canvas. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to turn this into this. So stay tuned and watch this video because you're going to learn some really neat stuff. So one of the first things we have to do with this is we're going to have to cut it down to the size that we want it. I cut it initially about 12 inches by about, I don't know, 20 inches or something like that. But I want to make a pouch that is about this big, but that looks a little long to me. So I'm going to cut a little bit off this edge. I'm also going to have to square this all off. So we're going to use that using a couple of tools. We're going to use a simple box cutter with a razor in it, and we're going to use our square to make sure that we get nice square edges on this piece of fabric. So I'm going to take this fabric. It's been cut a lot, so I'm going to actually start it off just by making a nice square cut. I think this edge here appears to be the best. Now you notice that it's scuffing up the fabric a little bit as I turn this over. I'm not going to worry about that because we can always smooth that out later. But actually this is going to get pretty beat up over time anyway, so I really don't care about this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I got this, you can see how off that is. So I'm going to square that edge off. I'm simply going to take this. One of the nice things about squaring this off or waxing, let me start this off. So this fabric has been cut along several edges. This is the straightest edge I've got. And so I'm going to use my square. I'm going to line it up on here, and then I'm going to cut off this piece right here. One of the advantages to waxing this fabric before I start trimming it is that once it's waxed, it's going to trim a lot easier. Also, you'll notice it's getting all scuffed up. I'm not going to worry about that because as I use this, it's going to get scuffed up anyway. So it kind of gives it that weathered look. So I'm just simply going to go down here and I'm going to cut off a piece of this fabric. And I got to hold this square down really tight because I do not want this square to move. Okay, so I've got a piece of that off. I've got a really nice square edge right there. Now I'm going to go down and I'm going to square off the rest of this. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to line that up along that, and I'm going to square this off. Now I'm cutting off some of this fabric, and that's okay because it's probably a little bigger than I wanted it anyway. I originally thought I'd be 9 by 12, but I think 12 is going to be a little deep. So I'm going to try to make it maybe 9 by 11, but I've still got to cut off a lot of this fabric. Now I'm using this instead of scissors because I can cut it a lot cleaner with this razor than I can cut it with scissors. And so I think I'm really going to like the outcome of this a whole lot better. So again, I can take this and just cut this right off down here. And I've got one more edge to trim. So we're going to trim this off along this edge so that it comes out nice and pretty. I want the whole thing to be nice and squared off. It's going to make it a whole lot easier to actually make this thing if that's the case. So my fabric is nice and squared off now, and I'm ready to start thinking about my project. Now, my project is going to involve me folding this over. I'm going to make an item up here at the top where I'm going to fold this over so I can have a string to go through there. And then I'm going to sew it along the side and also along the bottom to make my pouch. Now, a couple of things about this. We're going to make it so that we're going to turn it inside out when we're done. So we have to think about that as we're making all these adjustments and as we're doing everything. The other thing I'm going to do is as I sew this bag, I'm going to do the whole thing by hand. I could use a sewing machine, but just for fun, I want to try to do the whole thing using nothing but hand stitching. It's going to take me longer to do it, and trust me, I'm not going to show you all that hand stitching, but I'm going to do all this this stitching by hand just because I think that'll give it a more authentic flavor. So right now, this thing, if I fold this over, and nice thing about this too, I can crease this down here, and it's going to keep that fold really nice. Now, it's going to make a mark on it, but I can always undo that mark with a little heat, so that's not going to be a problem. Right now, this is going to measure a little over 9 inches, but remember, I've got to have some stitching down here along the side. So it'll probably, when I do get the stitching all done, I'll stitch down along here. I'll have about 9 inches. I don't really know if I want it this long yet. We'll decide once I get the first top done. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to sort of think about our tube up here where we're going to put our cord or whatever we're going to do to drawstring this thing. So part of the issue is that if I just fold it over and if I just fold this over and stitch it, there's going to be an edge here that is bare and it's going to fray. I don't want to see that. I don't think that looks nice. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold this over about like this. It doesn't really matter exactly how big it is, but I'm going to fold it over like this, and then I'm going to fold it over to match it on the other side. Now, what's going to happen when I turn this inside out, as you can see, what's going to happen is where the string comes out right here, it's going to be nice. There's not going to be an edge of any kind there, and that's really neat. And then once I do this, I'll fold this over to actually create a, I'm going to fold it over probably, let's see, probably about like this. And that will create for me a really nice pouch, I think, to run my cord through. I'm going to use some paracord. And so when I do this pouch, you can see the paracord will run through here. You won't actually see it on the outside. And it'll come out here. But what's nice is it's going to, and I've got to fold that down a little bit more because I didn't do it quite straight. But when I do this, that cord will come out right in here, and it's not going to, you're not going to see the frayed edges. Okay, so I've got my fabric, and I've got these two corners folded down here, and I'm going to sew those first down here and down, and then I'm going to go back up again because I want to double stitch that. Now I'm going to do it by hand, as I said. One of the hardest projects of any time you do a sewing project is, of course, the threading of the needle. So I'm going to actually start it down in here, and I'm going to pull this needle. I'm not going to pull it all the way through. I'm going to leave a little tail out because I'm going to use that to tie this off later. So that's probably a little not enough, so I'm going to pull a little bit of that tail out. So I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a little tail of thread right here. I'm going to try to leave that out. So I'm going to first go up to the top, then come back to the bottom. Now, I'm not going to actually show you all of this, but the idea is to get this whole thing sewn by hand all the way around and get these two corners tied down, because these will sort of form the outlet where the where my pocket is going to be. And so what I want is I want that pocket to be nice and strong, because it's going to sort of form that, you know, be that sort of structural piece that keeps the pocket or keeps the edge there from fraying as I tighten and loosen the drawstring over the years. So I'll show you what this looks like when I get it done. So I've got my thread. I've gone all the way down and up here twice. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back through, only this time I'm not going to go all the way through the fabric. I'm going to try to come out sort of up here. It's not going to work too well, I don't think. No, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tie this off with that old piece that I had left over when I started, that little tail. It's going to tie that off. I'm going to tie it off again. Got an awful lot of thread here. Tie it off like that. We'll tie it off one more time. I'll just cut this off. And I'll cut this other one off. And that side is done. What you can see is I've sewn that down and is now firmly sewn. You can see it on both sides. I got some threads already starting to unravel. That's why you do this, because this will unravel. You can see how on this side I've got the stitches, and you can sort of see where I stitched right in here. Now, it's not real pretty, but again, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things I can do is I can go back over this with my hairdryer, and it'll make all that go away if I really want to. I don't know if I want to. This will be on the outside. So now what I've got to do is I've got to go do this other corner the same way. So I've got both this corner sewn down, and I've also got this corner over here sewn down. So the next thing is to fold this down like this, and I have a nice big pocket now that I can slide my paracord through. But I'm going to sew this all along this edge right here. Now it's going to be tricky because I've got to try to keep it looking somewhat straight. So that's going to be a little bit difficult. I don't know. It's hard for me to stitch in a straight line. I'm not much of a seamstress. So I'll just have to do the best I can. Okay, so you can see I've actually finished sewing the top part. So if you remember, I folded over my corners here and here, and then I folded down about an inch from the top. I folded it down and I sewed it all along here and all along here. Now you can see the thread lines. I didn't do too badly. I was afraid that it was going to be really bad and ugly. If you look at the back side of it, you can see the thread line. It's not too bad. I thought I did pretty good doing it freehand, all by hand, with a needle and a thread, so I thought that worked out pretty well. Now, you also notice that here at the edges, this is folded over, so when my paracord comes out, I'm not going to get any fraying here at the edge where my paracord comes out. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually thread some 20 gauge snare wire through this pocket, and then we're going to pull our paracord through there. So let's see how that's done. So what I've done, I've cut a piece of wire that I can thread through this, this fabric here. And this piece of wire is 20 gauge snare wire. I actually punched it through the end of the paracord, and I've actually crimped that so that I can pull this paracord right through that slot. So I'm going to move my paracord over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread this through. Now it's a little tricky to thread this through, so you can see I've sort of pressed this down a little bit. Create a little channel for that paracord to go through, and it should make it a lot easier for me to press it to get this all the way through to the other side. Now you have to go pretty slow with it. You don't want to go fast or you're going to snag it up. When you snag this wire up, this wire is going to crimp on you really quick. So I can tell I'm right about here. It looks like it's got a little place it needs to go. So let's make a little tunnel here for it. So that's going, okay, it's going through nicely. So let me do it again here. I'm going to crimp this down a little bit. You can see. So I'm sort of just pushing it down and opening up that opening for this wire to pass through. And this wire should, in a moment, there it is. It's passed through to the other side. Now what I can do, I can simply pull my paracord, and I'll try to help my paracord get started in the hole. Now I can just take this wire and pull this wire, and it should pull that paracord right through there. So let's see. And there's the other end of the paracord. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave quite a bit on this paracord. I'm not sure exactly yet how much I want at the end of my paracord. So I'm just going to leave it right now. I'm going to pull through quite a bit. That's more than I need, but I can pull through that much. And we'll do about the same amount over on the other side. And then, of course, at some point what I'll do is I'll seal this, because if I don't seal this end with, I'm not going to do that, so let me use my pocket knife. If I don't seal that off with a lighter, it's going to unravel, and we don't want that to happen. So I'll just take my knife, we'll just cut that paracord, and then I'll seal that in a moment, and then I can start sewing on this fabric and creating the rest of my pouch. So I've got my bag and I've got my seam here, and it's ready to start folding my bag over and to sew along the bottom and the side so that I can actually create the bag. Now, your tendency is going to be to want to fold it over like this so that your seam for your pocket is on the inside. But remember, that's not what you want to do, because we're going to turn this thing inside out. We don't want to have the seams here showing. So what we really want to do is we want to fold it the other way. We want to fold it this way, so that while we're sewing the side and the bottom, this seam is showing. Eventually what we're going to do is we're going to turn this whole thing inside out, and that way when we turn it, all the seams will be on the inside and you won't see them. But right now we can see the seams. So let's just get started sewing along the bottom. I'm probably going to sew it right about this, right along this line, right about here. I'm going to make a nice straight line, and I can do that with my fingernails. I can just make a nice sort of straight line, and I'm going to sew right along this line to make my bag. And then once I get that done, I'll sew up the side. So I have my side, and then I'll be able to have my bag. Here's my ends of my paracord, and I'll eventually cut those to be equal lengths, and I'll put a keeper on those. But this way I can sew along this. I can have a nice edge, nice line on it, and have a nice straight stitch. And I can also make sure that I'm getting it at the right distance. So let's just get started. I'm going to start sewing this, and when I'm done, I'll show you what the final product looks like. Well, the bag is finished. I've stitched it all down along this side. I've stitched it down along the bottom. The only thing left is to try to turn this thing inside out. Now that may be harder than I think it is, but we're going to turn this thing inside out so we have a nice drawstring pouch. Okay, so there's the bag. I've crumpled it up a few times, so it actually looks kind of camouflagey, doesn't it? I can certainly get all that out if I heat up this fabric again. It'll make it all nice and smooth if that's what I want to do. I kind of like it with this look. So next we're going to turn this bag inside out. It's not a real easy thing. First thing I would suggest is try to crumple up the bottom a little bit, and then grab it, and then just start pushing it and pushing this down while you're sort of pushing this up. It's not real easy because this is really stiff. Now, the more you work with this fabric, the less stiff it is going to be. You see, I'm doing this fairly quickly. Now, I've done it once or twice, so the fabric is starting to loosen up a little bit. First time you do it, it might be really hard. Just be patient. It will turn inside out. So now I'm getting most of the corners out here, most of the bottom out. Now the corners are going to be a little bit more problematic. Getting those all the way out is going to be a little bit harder because they're tucked up in there. And you could take a tool and push those out if you want to. I think I can push them out as much as I need to with my thumb. I think that looks fine like that. You see, I've also added to this, I've added a little stopper here to this string. And, to demonstrate, I've been working with this a little bit, so it does close a little bit easier than it did before. And the more I work with it, the more it's going to close and the easier it's going to close. So I'm not worried about that. It expands right back open. I'm going to be able to put this on my pouch. So what'll happen is this bag will be on my belt. Fold it up like this. I'll have a leather thing on my belt, and when I unsnap it, I can just take this, I'll fold it down, fold it out, and I've got myself a nice, good size bag to put on my waist. And I can put a lot of stuff in that little dump pouch. Well, that was a really, really fun project. Your do-it-yourself waxed canvas foraging bag. I went down to Hobby Lobby, I bought the duck cloth, I waxed it myself, I cut it down, I sewed the whole thing myself by hand, not using a machine, and I really, really liked the outcome. What I got was a foraging bag that's about 9 inches by about 12 inches. I really like the way this turned out. It's bigger than most of the bags I get. In addition, when I go see a friend of mine, we're going to be able to make the leather attachment that allows me to attach this thing to my belt so that it'll fit my 2-inch bush belt, because as I said, none of the ones I found on Amazon were able to fit my 2-inch bush belt. So I'm going to have to make one on my own. Look, there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction that comes when you make a project like this all by yourself. You buy the fabric, you cut the fabric, you wax the fabric, you sew the fabric, and you end up with a really, really neat bag that you can just scrunch right down and close the top, or if you need to, you can open it up really easily, just like that. And this is a really, really great bag. It's going to last a long, long time. I know it's got this splotchy look right now. The more I use it, the lighter it's going to get as I use it, and I scrunch it up and I use it out in the woods. But it was a really, really great project. Look, if you liked the video, we want you to click the like button down below. We also want you to click the subscription button if you want to see more videos like this, and click that notification bell so that you will be informed when we have new videos come out. Look, if you want to know how to wax your own cotton, I've got the link to that video down below in the description area. And in a couple weeks, I'll have a video comes out, shows how I take this, attach it to a leather piece that'll make it attached to my belt so I can carry it on my bush belt. And that'll be a lot of fun as well. So in the meantime, remember what we always say, stay strong, stay prepared, and have a blessed day.